Hey guys, tonight we're slipping quietly into a world where beauty was less about filters and more about surviving powdered arsenic. Imagine it's the 1300s. You're waking up in a crooked timber cottage that leans slightly to the left. The straw mattress itched all night, and a rooster started yelling before the sun even showed up. There's no mirror on your wall, not because you're minimalist, but because glass is rare, expensive, and frankly terrifying when cracked. Still, like everyone else around you, you care, maybe too much, about how you look. Because in this world, beauty isn't just a luxury, it's a risk. The stakes are higher than smudged eyeliner or a bad haircut. Here, being considered pretty could earn you status or suspicion, attention or accusation. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments, where in the world are you listening from, and what time is it right now? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you notice is the absence of vanity. There's no drawer of concealers, no curling irons, no eyeshadow palettes, just a cracked basin of water, a lump of lard soap that smells faintly of sheep, and your own reflection, blurred in the liquid surface like some haunted fairy tale. You crouch down, trying to examine your face. There's a stubborn bit of soot smudged across your nose. You scrub with a cloth that's both scratchy and damp, but it just kind of spreads the grime evenly. Good enough. In the Middle Ages, your appearance wasn't just a reflection of self-care. It was a social billboard. Pale skin? That meant you weren't out toiling in the fields. Soft hands? Congratulations, you probably weren't a serf. A smooth face? You might have just caught someone's noble eye. And all the danger that came with it. But here's the kicker. The closer you get to ideal beauty, the more fragile your place becomes. Historians still argue whether it was safer to be plain in public. Less attention, fewer problems. But even modest looks couldn't always protect you from rumors, or from the mirrorless judgments of your neighbors. You throw on a wool dress, it's coarse and heavy, and it still smells faintly of smoke from the hearth. No tailoring, no elastic. It was made to last, not to flatter. But you might still try, tying a ribbon around your waist. Maybe it'll hint at a shape beneath all this fabric. Now, about those mirrors again. Most medieval folks didn't have one. If they did, it was polished metal, often bronze, only clear enough to vaguely recognize your nose. The wealthiest might afford small hand mirrors of blown glass with silver backing, imported from Venice. But even those weren't for obsessing, over contouring. They were symbols of wealth, not self-love. You pull back your hair with a linen strip. It's been days since you combed it fully, partly because the comb is wood with teeth spaced like optimism, and partly because combing might wake the lice. You grimace and tie it back anyway. Beauty routines were often passed down like secrets, whispered, from mother to daughter. There wasn't a medieval Sephora, but there were recipes. You could mash rosemary with goose fat to make a kind of balm. Some women dabbed on sour milk or crushed violets. Others went bolder, rubbing ashes on their teeth to brighten them or applying egg whites to stiffen their skin like nature's collagen. And then there's your neighbor, Ethel, who insists she knows someone who used frog spawn for face. Masks. You don't ask questions. Ethel also talks to her goose like it's royalty. As you step outside, the cool morning mist clings to your cheeks. You inhale the scent of damp earth, chimney smoke, and the faint aroma of pig pens. It's oddly grounding. You nod to a few early risers, avoiding too much eye contact. Because here's the unspoken rule. Pretty people get noticed. And when people notice you, they talk. Take the case of one lady in 14th century Florence. Legend says her beauty caught the wrong noble's attention. Before she knew it, she was married off, against her will, to a man twice her age. Her father's debts magically disappeared, and so did her freedom. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. You pass the communal well, where two women gossip in. Hushed tones about someone whose daughter hasn't worn a veil lately. The implications hang heavy in the air. In this world, beauty walks hand in hand with modesty. Fail to look just right, and you risk looking too willing. Back at home, you inspect a little glass vial in your pouch. A recent acquisition. Inside is a gritty powder, crushed roots mixed with something vaguely metallic. The apothecary swore it would lighten your skin. Said it's all the rage among noble ladies in London. You're tempted, but also wary. Last week, another villager tried something similar and ended up with angry red boils across her cheeks. She's been hiding ever since. Historians still argue whether these early cosmetic powders were meant purely for looks or if they had medicinal beliefs attached. Some records suggest women thought they were balancing humors, cooling the body, preventing fevers. Others think it was just trend following, plain and simple. You stash the vial and decide to risk it another day. Down the road, a merchant's daughter struts by. Her sleeves are embroidered and her cheeks are unnaturally pink, probably beet, juice, or some boiled wine trick. She walks like someone who knows she's being watched. You can't help but wonder if it's worth it. The attention, the whispers, the risk. Because here, in this world without selfies, the painful price of beauty isn't just what you smear on your face, it's what you invite into your life. Admiration, yes, but also envy, judgment, and sometimes fear. You slip back into your cottage, draw the curtains against the day's gaze, and think. Maybe plainness has its perks, but don't get too comfortable. We haven't even gotten to the part where pale skin could literally kill you. You sit on your three-legged stool and reach for the small wooden box beneath your cot, the one you keep wrapped in a linen cloth and hidden beneath old kindling. Inside, nestled like contraband, is a small cone of white powder, chalky, soft, deceptively innocent. This, your friend swears, is the secret used by the noblewoman 2 villages over, the one who's rumored to have skin as pale as moonlight. She also hasn't been seen outside in weeks. Coincidence? Still, you tap a bit of the powder into your palm. It smells faintly metallic, with a whisper of something sharp. You're not exactly sure what's in it, though someone muttered the word ceruse when you first got it. That's lead carbonate, by the way, literal lead, ground fine and pressed into the skin. In the Middle Ages, it was the high-fashion death trap of choice. You dab a bit onto your cheek, gently rubbing it in. It stings. Not enough to scream about, just enough to remind you it's working, or damaging. Often the same thing. Beauty in medieval Europe was synonymous with pale skin. Not the healthy kind, but the I may or may not be dying of anemia kind. This wasn't just vanity. It was a symbol. Pale meant privilege. If you weren't tanned from field work, you must be of higher status. You must be inside. And so, women reached for anything that could bleach them lighter. Ground pearl, vinegar-soaked bread paste, even arsenic. That's right. Your skincare routine might have shared an ingredient list with pest control. Historians still argue whether women truly understood the long-term dangers of these compounds. Some suggest they simply didn't know. Others believe they knew something was off, but believed the trade-off was worth it. After all, beauty was currency. And this powder, it bought admiration, suitors, protection, and sometimes very early funerals. You move to the window, trying to catch your reflection in the old pewter dish on the sill. The sun has risen a bit now, casting a pale glow over the village rooftops. Your skin does look lighter, whiter, masked, in a way that feels both regal and eerie. You look less like yourself. That's sort of the point. It's not just lead, though. You've heard of women soaking their faces in vinegar every morning to close the pores. Of course, this also stripped their skin and made them more sensitive to the sun. A bonus, really. Burn less, tan never. One woman, rumored to have once attended court in Avignon, bragged that she hadn't stood in full sunlight in 2 years. She claimed she only traveled under veils or wide-brimmed hats. Her secret weapon? A daily rinse of mercury water. She also had missing eyebrows and was, reportedly, a little confused most days of the week. But hey, beauty hurts. You decide to test a little more of the powder, this time under your eyes. Just a bit. That hollow. Look was in back then. In some regions, a slightly gaunt appearance was fashionable, even poetic. It suggested romantic suffering. Maybe you had a secret longing. Maybe you just hadn't eaten in 3 days. Same look. And just to enhance the illusion, there was always belladonna. The juice of deadly nightshade dripped carefully into the eyes to dilate pupils. It gave the eyes a wide, luminous, starry look. Also caused blurred vision, headaches, and sometimes permanent blindness. It was not ideal, but it made for a dreamy stare. You blink. Just powder today, no eye drops. Out the window, you spot a young man walking past. He doesn't look up, but his dog does, tail wagging lazily. You duck back slightly, heart skipping just a little. Was he glancing? Did he notice? This is how it starts. The attention, the weighing glances, and it's always a double-edged sword. Look too plain and you're forgettable. Look too done up and you're suddenly suspicious. Is she trying to seduce someone? Is she vain? Is she hiding something? In some towns, especially during periods of religious fervor, women were condemned simply for spending too much time on their appearance, accused of idleness, of temptation, of pride. And pride, as any preacher would remind you, was a deadly sin. You sit back down and wrap the box again. You'll use it sparingly, just enough to pass. To be noticed, but not too much. Because in the Middle Ages, your face is a battlefield. Every powder, every paste, every concoction is a choice. How visible do you want to be? And how much pain? Are you willing to endure for the soft illusion of status? Your skin itches a little now, where the powder settled. You press it gently, hoping the rash doesn't spread. And then there's the deeper irony. Some of the women considered most beautiful, in their time were already suffering from the very things that made them beautiful. Take Eleanor of Aquitaine, whose pale skin and narrow frame were praised in song and story. Some scholars now wonder whether the look we idolize may have actually been early signs of chronic illness. Historians still debate whether these beauty ideals were rooted in real admiration or crafted by the poets and clergy to reflect virtue, purity, frailty, innocence. Basically, the more ghost-like you appeared, the closer to heaven you must be. You sigh and glance again at the pewter reflection. Your cheeks are whiter now, your lips pale by contrast. You resemble one of those saints in the stained glass windows. Ethereal, suffering, silent. It's a look, but is it really you? You lean closer to the little basin of water, inspecting your reflection, or the ghost of it. There's a smear of white powder at your jawline, uneven. You dab at it with a corner of your sleeve, but now it's just patchy. Somehow, fixing. One thing always reveals another. Welcome to beauty in the Middle Ages, a constant game of diminishing returns, where perfection is pursued with tools better suited to baking than to self-care. As you fumble with your sleeve, you remember something. You overheard at the well 2 days ago. One of the merchant's sisters, giggling behind her hand, whispered that high foreheads were all the rage now. A true mark of refinement. The bigger, the better. And not big from age or stress, but deliberately enhanced. By removing your eyebrows and hairline, you blink at your reflection. You have a pretty average forehead, if you're honest. You hadn't thought about it much. But now, you start imagining it wider, smoother, regal. So you reach into the little pouch of beauty instruments you keep behind the stove, a misfit collection of bent tweezers, broken shears, and something that looks like a fish hook, but you swear is meant for splinters. You select the tweezers. Time to join the trendsetters. Plucking your eyebrows is not just painful, it's slow. Every hair fights back, and these aren't the tidy arch shapes of modern Instagram dreams. These are wiry, rebellious Middle Ages brows. But you persist, one tug at a time. The skin starts to redden. You wince and mumble something unrepeatable under your breath. A nearby chicken clucks in sympathy. Medieval women didn't just stop at brows. They sometimes removed entire patches of hair from their scalp to elongate the forehead. You imagine taking scissors to your own hairline and feel a shiver run down your spine. But some women went even further, using lime solutions or burnt walnut shells to scorch the follicles into submission. Historians still argue whether this was rooted in fashion alone or if there were deeper religious connotations, perhaps a visual cue of humility or piety, given the association of hair with vanity. Whatever the reason, the result was the same: an eerily bald forehead that screamed nobility to anyone who saw it. You decide to stop after just the eyebrows. For now, to distract yourself from the stinging, you rummage for your little vial of rose water, a rare luxury. It's meant to soothe the skin, but it also smells decent. Less like barn and more like trying. You dab a few drops onto your brow, patting gently. There's a rustling outside. You peek through the door. It's old Agnes again, trudging by with her cart full of firewood and that permanently skeptical look on her face. She glances at your doorway, eyes narrowing just slightly. You pull back. Agnes hasn't had eyebrows since the famine of '78. You suspect she's not a fan of the beauty arms race. Back at your mirror dish, you catch your altered reflection. No brows, powdery. Cheeks, slightly inflamed skin. And something else, something tired in your own eyes. Because this isn't just grooming. This is performance. Labor. A silent, painful audition for a stage you never asked to be on. Still, the rewards of this painful ritual are real. Sort of. The baker's daughter who shaved her forehead last summer ended up betrothed to a merchant. Coincidence? Maybe. Maybe not. And remember that traveling minstrel who serenaded your cousin after she stained her lips with crushed elderberries? His lute broke 2 days later, but still, the moment was magical. You reach for a cloth and rub, gently at the rest of your face. Some of the powder comes off, some doesn't. The oil from your skin is baked in, creating a kind of accidental contour. You look like a portrait that's been left in the rain. Speaking of portraits, did you know that in medieval manuscripts, women were often drawn with those same ghostly white faces and mountainous foreheads? Even the Virgin Mary, in many illuminated texts, sports a brow big enough to host a feast. Some scholars now believe these weren't just stylistic choices, but actual reflections of popular beauty trends, idealized, exaggerated, and deeply aspirational. Others argue that these manuscript illuminators were mostly monks, many of whom had probably never seen a naked woman, let alone understood the nuances of her skincare routine. This may explain why many of their drawings also include random snails, disembodied heads, or rabbits jousting with spoons. Still, the beauty ideal persisted. No brows, big forehead, ghost face. Sounds familiar, right? You tug a loose strand of hair from your temple, tucking it behind your ear. There's a temptation to go further, to pluck more, maybe just thin the hairline a little. But a knock at the door interrupts your spiral. It's your neighbor. She wants to borrow a needle and maybe some vinegar. You hand them over through the cracked door. She glances at your face, blinks once, then smiles politely. But there's something behind the smile, either admiration or concern. It's hard to tell. You don't ask. After she leaves, you sit down heavily on the cot. The tweezers sit next to you like a tiny weapon. You imagine the noblewomen in their castles, spending hours each day preparing, painting, peeling, plucking. You wonder if they too felt exhausted by it all. You wonder if any of them ever looked in their polished silver mirrors and whispered, "Is this enough?" And in a world without real mirrors, maybe that question didn't get asked out loud. Maybe the answer was always more. You're starting to wonder if your face will ever feel normal again. The skin above your brows is sore, your cheeks itch faintly from the powder, and every time you blink there's a tension in your forehead, as if your reflection has been rewired into a performance mask. You try not to scratch. It'll only make it worse. Still, at least you haven't gotten to your teeth yet. You open the little drawer beside your cot, more of a wooden crate, really, and pull out a bundle of cloth containing your tooth tools. There's no toothbrush. That doesn't exist yet, at least not in any form you'd want in your mouth. Instead, you have a frayed twig, chewed at one end, and a powdery black mixture wrapped in waxed paper. You open the paper. The scent of burnt bread wafts up, charred crust, finely ground with salt. You dip the twig into it and start scrubbing. The taste is bitter, salty, and gritty. But for a brief moment, your mouth feels slightly cleaner. In the Middle Ages, oral hygiene was creative. There were no dentists, unless you count the barber surgeon, who was just as likely to cut your hair as he was to yank your molars with tongs. So people improvised. They chewed aromatic herbs like parsley, sage, or mint. They rubbed their gums with cloth dipped in vinegar. Some even used crushed bones or oyster shells as a tooth polish. And if that sounds bad, just wait for the urine. Yes, you heard that right. Some tooth-cleaning concoctions included stale human urine, believed to whiten teeth due to its ammonia content. It was common enough to be recorded in multiple medical texts. You pass on that method, thank you very much. Still, the pressure for a nice smile remained. Not because people were flashing toothy grins in portraits, smiling with teeth was seen as uncouth, but because bad breath and rotting teeth were both a health hazard and a class marker. If your teeth were clean or at least intact, you were likely well-fed, well-groomed, and possibly marriage material. You finish scrubbing, rinse your mouth with a weak vinegar water blend, and try a small smile in the pewter dish. It's okay. A little gray around the edges, but serviceable. Historians still argue whether medieval dental care was purely functional or part of beauty culture. Some records suggest that mouth cleanliness was expected of courtiers and brides, hinting that hygiene and allure were closely linked, even without Colgate or TikTok tutorials. You sit back and recall a story told by an older cousin about a noblewoman who rinsed her mouth daily with wine boiled with cloves, not just to freshen her breath, but to stain her lips a deeper red. Lips, after all, were another battleground. Unlike today's obsession with plumpness, medieval ideals leaned toward soft but subtle, colored but not too boldly. Crushed berries, burnt almonds, red ochre, or the aforementioned wine-clove combo were all used to darken the lips slightly, giving a just-bitten look that suggested health and fertility, or maybe just access to decent fruit. You fish out a shriveled blackcurrant from yesterday's bread and mash it gently with your fingertip, then rub it onto your lips. The effect is minimal, but it adds a hint of something. You lean into your reflection. You could almost pass for one of the town portraits hanging in the parish hall, the ones that look half asleep, half annoyed. It's strange, you think, how much pain and effort goes into looking like you aren't trying. Looking naturally beautiful meant endless work, scraping, scrubbing, burning, plucking, all while pretending it happened on accident. You think again of Lady Marjorie, who lives 2 towns over and is said to have a smile like sunlight and hair the color of summer wheat. Someone claims she rubs her teeth with cuttlefish bone and washes her mouth with goat's milk. Another swears she uses snail slime. The truth is probably more mundane. She's just lucky with her teeth. But no one wants to believe that. We like beauty to have a recipe, even a dangerous one. Because if there's a recipe, then maybe we can follow it. Maybe we can control it. You wrap your dental tools again and tuck them away. Then you reach for your small pot of scent. It's not perfume, exactly. It's a hardened paste of resin, dried herbs, and animal fat, mostly to mask the less poetic aspects of medieval living. You dab a bit on your neck, behind your ears. It smells smoky, earthy, and vaguely medicinal, like pine tar had a fling with dried lavender. Perfume in the Middle Ages was more necessity than luxury. Daily bathing wasn't common, especially in colder climates. Water was often unsafe. Soap was rough on the skin and precious, so scent became armor. Cloaks were lined with scented sachets. Gloves were rubbed with oils. People carried pomanders, tiny, perforated balls filled with spices and musk, to ward off disease and unpleasant smells. Of course, not all scents were harmless. Some perfumes were made with ambergris, musk, or civet, ingredients harvested under highly questionable methods. Others included crushed herbs soaked in alcohol or vinegar, then left to ferment. Some nobles even commissioned personal scent servants, whose only job was to keep their master surrounded by pleasant odors at all times. You don't have a scent servant, just your little pot of pine fat paste. You take one last breath of it before tucking it back under the bed. The room smells slightly better now, less like goats, more like effort. You lie back on the cot, staring up at the low wooden beams. Your face stings a little. Your mouth tastes of salt and charcoal. But for the moment you are, by medieval standards, presentable. Which is to say, visibly pale, mostly hairless in the right places, lightly scented, and hopefully not decaying. And tomorrow, it starts all over again. The sun climbs higher now, casting a soft golden light through the warped glass window. You stretch, rubbing the soreness from your shoulders, though it does little to relieve the weight of the morning's rituals. Powdered skin, scraped teeth, vanished brows. It's only breakfast and already your face has endured more than most fields. Still, you're not finished. There's the matter of scent and bathing, and it's not as simple as running a hot shower and lathering up with lavender-scented soap. Bathing in the Middle Ages was an event, not a habit. If you were lucky and wealthy, you might own a wooden tub. If not, you made do with a stream, a bucket, or most commonly, a visit to the stews, public bathhouses that were about as hygienic as you'd imagine for something shared by dozens of people a day. You gather your things, a faded shift, a thin bar of soap made from rendered animal fat, and a small pouch of herbs. You've added lavender and sage to the bundle, your one indulgence. You wrap it tightly in cloth to use as a scented scrub. It's not fancy, but it hides the scent of cabbage and smoke, and honestly, that's all you're aiming for. The bathhouse is a short walk, but every step is a gamble. Slippery cobblestones, dripping eaves, gossiping neighbors. You nod politely to the woman selling eels from a barrel, yes, again, and to the man furiously ringing a handbell because someone's pig escaped. As you walk, you can't help but reflect on how weirdly contradictory the attitudes toward bathing are. On one hand, people do bathe. The Roman tradition of cleanliness didn't vanish completely. Public bathhouses flourished, especially in larger towns and cities. Steam rooms, hot baths, cold plunges, they all existed. Some even offered massages and snacks. Think of it as a medieval day spa, if your spa came with a side of typhoid. But on the other hand, religious authorities often frowned upon excessive cleanliness. To some, it reeked of vanity. The body was sinful, after all. Too much care suggested. Pride. Others feared that heat opened the pores and the soul to disease and sin. Historians still debate whether these fears were based on actual medical beliefs or just convenient excuses to save on soap and moral panic. You reach the door of the bathhouse, which creaks open with a dramatic groan. Inside, the air is thick with steam, mildew, and human effort. You pay your coin, nod to the bath mistress, and find a spot near the edge of the tub. The water is lukewarm and already a bit murky. You try not to think about it too hard. You undress and step in, the water clinging to your skin like regret. It's soothing, for now. Around you, women scrub each other's backs, share news, whisper rumors. Someone asks if Lady Cecily is still using leeches on her cheeks. Another laughs and says no, she switched to red wine dabs. It's supposed to bring a healthy glow. Someone else mutters that the only glow Cecily's getting is from rosacea and bad lighting. You soak in silence, listening. Bathhouses weren't just for cleaning. They were hubs of beauty exchange. Women traded recipes, criticized trends, and swapped secrets. From lotions made of crushed almonds to balms made of swan's fat and rose water, the medieval beauty industry was surprisingly rich. Dangerous, but rich. One woman nearby lifts a jar and offers it to her neighbor. "Try this," she says. "Made from boiled cow marrow. Keeps the skin soft." The neighbor wrinkles her nose but dabs a little onto her forearm. You watch and make a mental note. Maybe you'll try that next week, if your current rash hasn't spread. You pull out your herb bundle and begin scrubbing gently. The lavender scent lifts slightly above the steam, mixing with the odd assortment of aromas around you. Body heat, melted tallow, and the faint metallic tang of old iron pipes. It's strange, but not entirely unpleasant. And there's something else, something deeply human, about the ritual. Painful as these beauty routines may be, they also bind you to your peers. Everyone's trying. Everyone's patching, plucking, puffing. It's not vanity. It's survival. A way of saying, I am here and I still care to be seen. You think back to a story the bath mistress once told you of a woman who used to bathe in goat milk, claiming it kept her skin as smooth as glass. She also lost her teeth at 30, but her skin? Flawless. Some claimed she died young because of a cursed charm. Others say it was the mercury in her eyeliner. Either way, her memory has become legend. Historians still argue whether medieval people bathed more or less than we think. Some claim people bathed weekly. Others say it was monthly, or even only on special occasions. The truth probably lies somewhere in between, muddled by time and perspective, like most things from this era. You soak a little longer, letting the warmth seep into your bones. Your muscles relax. Your skin softens. For a brief moment, the pain of maintenance fades, replaced by something close to comfort. But it won't last. Eventually, you'll have to stand, dry off with a rough cloth, and step back into the cold. The powder will go back on. The scents will return. The scrutiny will resume. Because looking good in the Middle Ages wasn't just a personal decision, it was a social requirement, and often a spiritual one. You step out of the tub, towel off with the one dry corner of your cloth, and redress in layers still faintly damp from the mist. You glance once at the small copper mirror nailed to the bathhouse wall. Your cheeks are flushed, your brows are gone, and your skin, despite everything, glows a little. You don't smile, but you nod. You'll pass for pretty today. You make your way back home, damp hair wrapped in linen, face still warm from the bathhouse steam. As you walk, the breeze brushes over your skin, and for a rare moment it feels like your pores are breathing. You feel lighter, cleaner, yes, but also exposed. Bare skin in public, even briefly, is a strange vulnerability in this world. The fresh-faced glow won't last long, of course. You'll soon cover it again, with powder, with rouge, with fabric, with effort. Because a little flush in the cheeks may look natural now, but by this afternoon, you'll need help maintaining the illusion. That's where the leeches come in. Yes, leeches. You return home, toss your wrap onto the cot, and reach beneath the floorboard. There's a small glass jar buried there, just cool enough to keep things alive. Inside, 2 fat, slow-moving leeches, lazily swimming in murky water. You hate them, but you also keep them. The trend isn't new. For centuries, people believed that bloodletting balanced the body's humors, the 4 bodily fluids that supposedly determined your mood, health, and even attractiveness. A good bleed could bring a healthy pink flush to the face. A strategic one could reduce puffiness, brighten the eyes, and deliver that delicate glow so many noble ladies pursued. You roll up your sleeve and stare at the pale skin of your forearm. The leech won't leave a scar, probably. Just a red ring and a small bruise, which can be covered. You hesitate. Historians still argue whether medieval women truly believed in the medical effects of cosmetic bloodletting, or whether it was just one more thing to do in the name of beauty. Some doctors wrote about it as a cure. Others denounced it as nonsense, or even vanity masquerading as medicine. You decide to skip it today, maybe next week. Your last bruise took too long to fade. Instead, you reach for your other tool, rouge. Today's. Rouge is a mix you bought from a traveling tinker. He claimed it came from Paris. More likely it came from the riverbank. It's made from crushed cochineal beetles, a bit of lard, and a whisper of something sulfurous that makes your nose twitch. You dab it onto your cheeks, just a touch. Then you blend it out with your fingers, trying not to smear the powder underneath. The effect is subtle but effective. Like you've just come in from a walk, or maybe had a fainting spell in a garden. That's the aesthetic. Flushed, fragile, slightly consumptive. You think of the noblewoman who reportedly mixed her rouge with wine and goat's milk, insisting it would glide on better. She also allegedly fainted every week from blood loss, but she was called beautiful in every court letter for a decade. You add a bit more to the tip of your nose. It's a trick some women use to appear youthful and innocent. Youth and innocence. Two prized traits, and ironically, two you lose rapidly trying to chase them. You glance at your lips, still faintly red from the currant mash earlier, but you touch them up with a bit of your rouge as well. Then carefully you run a cloth over your forehead, blotting away the fine dew of nervous sweat that started to collect. You're glowing, but not in the flattering sense. And here's the real paradox. This entire process is supposed to make you look natural. Not made up, not done, but born that way. Yet it takes hours, pain, ingredients that could kill you, tools you keep, hidden like contraband. Some women do it better, or worse. There's no real consistency. You think of young Beatrice, who tried to use lamb's blood for her rouge. It looked vibrant, until it dried, cracked, and gave her cheeks the appearance of a roasting ham. People talked. She hasn't been to market in weeks. Or Lady Hildegard, who allegedly imported powdered cinnabar from Spain. Beautiful color, sure, but also mercury. Her face began to peel after a few weeks. And still, people asked where she bought it. You sigh and sit at the edge of the cot, your face now finished. Pale, but not too pale. Flushed, but not sweaty. Lips colored, but not overly so. It's a look designed to appear effortless, yet took nearly 2 hours of plucking, scrubbing, painting, and restraint. Outside, a bell rings. It's nearly midday. You pull on your outer wrap, a soft wool shawl with tiny stitched flowers along the hem, and head to market. The sun is higher now, and you duck your head, keeping your freshly powdered skin out of direct light. That powder is not made for sweating. At the market, it's a parade of faces. Some women are bare-faced, usually older, their eyes tired but direct. Others are powdered like you, their features carefully constructed into the medieval version of beauty. High forehead, pale skin, faint blush, quiet dignity. And yet you notice the ones who go just a step further. The woman with crimson cheeks and braided gold in her hair. The girl with lips stained so deeply it looks like she bit into a pomegranate. Everyone's competing. Everyone's pretending not to notice. You nod to the fishmonger's wife, who smirks at your brow. Too thin? Too bare? Too fashionable? Hard to tell. That's the thing about beauty here. It's rarely said aloud. Approval is given through glances, through silence, through being invited or not, to the nicer end of the market stall. There's a quiet tension to the whole affair. Everyone is watching, judging, not out of malice necessarily, but because they have to. Beauty means something here. It means respect, opportunity, safety, sometimes even survival, and yet it costs so much. Not in coin, always, but in time, in comfort, in health. You buy your vegetables. You nod. You smile politely. And as you pass the mirror in the apothecary's window, real Venetian glass, warped but precious, you catch your reflection again. Rouge, powder, no brows. A version of you, a mask maybe, but a necessary one. You return from market with a basket of root vegetables, a small wedge of cheese, and a ribbon you couldn't afford but bought anyway. It's not that you need the ribbon, it's that someone else might notice you didn't have one. The weight of appearances presses on you even in the most mundane details. At home, the sunlight glints through the cracks in the shutters. You peel off your shawl, set down your basket, and take a moment to exhale. Your face feels tight. Powder mixed with sweat has formed a fine crust over your skin. You resist the urge to scratch, because if you scratch, you might smear something, and if you smear something, you might have to start over. That's where the lead comes in. Yes, lead. You kneel beside your small wooden chest and open the false bottom. There, nestled in a cloth, is a round tin. Inside, Venetian ceruse, a white, paste made of lead carbonate and vinegar. Imported, expensive, and extremely popular among the upper classes. Not because it's good for you, quite the opposite, but because it makes your skin look pale, smooth, and luminescent until it doesn't. You haven't used it yet. You've only seen it on others. Noble women mostly, or the daughters of minor lords who think they're noble. The kind of women who wear veils indoors and speak like every sentence is a confession. They glide through rooms with faces like porcelain saints. That's the dream, isn't it? But you've seen the dark side too. The same noble women, a few years on, developing pockmarks, hair thinning, teeth yellowing. One had skin that began to flake off in sheets. Old age, someone whispered. But she was only 23. Historians still argue whether these women realized the cause or chose not to know. Some wrote in their journals about the price of elegance. Others claimed the illness came from bad air or impure water or witchcraft. You close the tin. Not today. Instead, you rinse your face at the basin with cold water and a sliver of lavender soap. You dab gently with a cloth. Underneath, your real skin peeks out. Blotchy, a little red from the rouge. And yes, slightly oily. It's not porcelain, but it's real. There's a kind of grief in that. Because real isn't beautiful here. You sit at the table, unbraiding your hair slowly. The strands are coarse at the ends, soft near the scalp. You run a carved comb through the tangle, tugging, gently. Hair is one of the few areas where you still feel some control. It grows, at least. It gleams sometimes. You can braid it to look elegant, or twist it up for work. You can hide behind it if you need to. But even this comes with rules. The church has opinions. So many, in fact, that they issued entire sermons about it. According to some clergy, to wear your hair long and loose is to invite sin. To braid it elaborately is vanity. To cover it is modesty, unless the fabric is too fine, in which case it becomes pride. It's a tightrope walk between devotion and damnation. You think of that time your cousin was forced to cut her hair after being seen talking to a boy in the garden. No one proved anything, but her parents did it anyway. A symbolic cleansing, they said. She didn't speak for a week. Still, hair holds power. Some women soak theirs in lye to lighten it, usually a terrible idea since lye is more soap than science and tends to burn. Others rub in mixtures of honey, saffron, or even pigeon droppings. Anything for that soft, sunlit blonde that's become the gold standard of attractiveness. You once tried a saffron wash. It made your scalp itch for 3 days. You glance at your ribbon again. Silly thing. Deep green, with little stitched vines along the edges. You're not sure why you picked it. You're not sure who you picked it for. Maybe no one. Maybe yourself. You tie it into your braid anyway, just in case. The window creaks open wider with the breeze, and you hear the distant sound of bells. It's vespers. The church bells ring across town and suddenly everyone is moving. Old women gather their baskets. Boys herd sheep back to their pens. The fishmongers wash down their stalls. Time folds in on itself, and you wonder briefly how many generations of women have done exactly this. Wiped off rouge, combed out curls, listened to the bell, and felt a quiet ache they didn't know how to name. You remember something your grandmother said once. Pretty is a debt you never finish paying. At the time, you thought she was just being grim. But now, in the soft, cooling twilight, her words ring louder than the bells. You finish combing, roll your braid into a knot, and pin it up. You light a small beeswax candle and begin preparing the evening meal. Turnips mostly, a little garlic, a crust of bread, the cheese, if you're feeling generous with yourself. As you slice, you glance at the mirror hanging by the doorway. It's warped and old, the kind that makes you look like you're halfway underwater. You catch your reflection. Not lovely exactly, but present, awake, whole. And for a moment, just a flicker, you let yourself believe that maybe beauty doesn't always have to hurt, but even that thought feels like rebellion. You wake before dawn, as always. The chill creeps into your bones before your eyes open. The fire in the hearth has long since faded to ash, and your breath mists in the air. You curl deeper into your thin blanket, but eventually the stiffness in your back wins and you sit up. Today is no ordinary day. There's talk of a festival in the town square, a saint's day perhaps, or some noble's wedding. You've heard different versions, each more dramatic than the last. But what matters is this: people will gather. There will be food, song, and dancing. And most importantly, people will see you, which means, of course, you have to prepare. But in the Middle Ages, getting ready doesn't mean dabbing perfume and slipping into a pre-fitted dress. It's a full-body ordeal. And if you want to appear halfway presentable, especially in front of a crowd, you'll need to work with the tools at hand. You kneel beside the chest again, where all your beauty instruments live. Wooden tweezers, a cracked bit of mirror, your comb worn smooth by use, a length of cloth dyed with madder root, your version of blush. You dip the cloth in water, squeeze it out, and rub it lightly across your cheeks. A flush blooms faintly, then you press it to your lips. It's a subtle trick, making your face look more alive without appearing like you tried to make it look alive. Effortlessness, after all, is part of the act. It's strange, you think, how many of these rituals are meant to erase the evidence of life. Cover the sunburn from working outdoors. Scrub away the soot under your nails. Smother your natural scent with herbs so you smell more like rosemary than sweat. And heaven forbid you let a pimple show. Historians still argue whether the obsession with cleanliness in medieval beauty was tied more to religious ideals or health theories. Some say it stemmed from the church, which equated bodily decay with sin. Others point to humoral medicine, the belief that balancing fluids in your body could keep you well and beautiful and pious all at once. Either way, it left little room for imperfections. You work your way through your routine, pull your hair tight at the crown, pin it under a coif, then let just a few curls escape near your temples. Soft framing, they call it. It's supposed to look demure, innocent, like you didn't even try even though you very much did. And then, the dress. You lay it out carefully. It's not new. In fact, it's 3 hand-me-downs deep and patched at the hem. But it's your finest. Pale blue, slightly faded, with embroidered cuffs you added yourself. You even stitched a little flower into the lining, hidden from sight. Just for you. Sliding it over your shift feels like stepping into someone else's skin, not the working girl with chapped hands and tired feet. No. This version of you is elegant, composed, ready. Your neighbor once said that every woman keeps a second self folded in her wardrobe. You didn't understand it then. But now, smoothing the fabric at your hips, you do. You step into the street, and already the town feels different. More voices, more color. Bunting strung between buildings, crude but cheerful. A man plays a lute, badly near the fountain, and children chase each other, squealing with laughter. You pass a woman selling spiced nuts, their sweet scent cutting through the morning air. Everyone is performing, not just you. The blacksmith's daughter wears a cloak she clearly borrowed. The baker's wife has rearranged her braids into something elaborate, if slightly crooked. Even the monks look more polished than usual, robes freshly laundered and faces recently shaved. This is no ordinary gathering. It's theater, and everyone knows their role. You walk slowly, pretending not to care who notices you, but your eyes scan the crowd anyway. A few glances linger longer than others. One boy nudges another, whispers something. You pretend not to see, but inside your heart flutters. Do you feel proud, nervous, a little of both? You lean against a stall selling ribbons and trinkets, fingers brushing the wooden counter. The seller, a woman older than she admits, grins at you knowingly. "Pretty day," she says, then winks. "Pretty girl, too." You smile back, but you don't know what to say, because pretty feels like a tightrope, a compliment that comes with thorns. And yet, you want it. That's the ache of it all. To be noticed is to be seen, and to be seen is to be vulnerable. But to go unseen? That's worse. A group of musicians begins to play near the square. Flute, drum, and a reedy sort of horn that sounds like it's made of bees. People start clapping, gathering in a loose circle. You step back, staying close to the edge, close to safety. Then a boy asks you to dance. You freeze. He's not the most handsome, but not unpleasant either. His tunic is neat. His hands are clean. He looks you in the eye. And you say yes. Because why not? Your shoes pinch a little, and your dress tugs tight when you raise your arms. But the music lifts you. You turn, spin, laugh, a real one this time, and for a moment, you're just movement and sound and breath. Not a face to be judged, not a body to be sculpted, just a girl, alive, in a moment. Later, when the music ends, your cheeks are flushed and your hair has come loose. You retreat to the edge of the square, breathless. The boy gives a shy nod and disappears into the crowd. You sit on the stone ledge of a fountain and let yourself exist. Messy, unperfected, joyful. And for once, you don't worry how it looks, because it feels right. The festival lingers in your bones like warmth from the last spoonful of stew, gone, but still comforting. By dusk, the crowd thins. The music fades into the soft strum of one last lute, played more out of habit than performance. You walk home slowly, carrying the edges of your dress to avoid the mud. Your feet hurt. Your hair is slipping out of its pins, and your cheeks are still burning, not from rouge this time, but from a laugh that caught you off guard. Once you're inside, you peel off the layers of presentation, the tight sash, the too smooth braid, the smile you practiced in a broken mirror. Your shoulders slump into their natural shape. You light a single candle, not for beauty, just for peace. The thing about beauty in the Middle Ages you've come to realize is that it's never really yours. It's borrowed, leased even, and always tied to something else, a family's reputation, a dowry's worth, a man's approval, a town's gossip. In private, you prefer being plain, but the outside world doesn't make that easy. Your thoughts drift back to the square, to the women who drew the most glances, the ones with unnaturally pale faces. You know what that means. Ceruse, lead-based makeup applied to mimic the lily-white skin favored in noble courts. Even peasants sometimes tried to copy it, grinding chalk or flour into their face paint. The trouble is, it cracks. Quickly, and with repeated use, it makes your skin worse. Some women added mercury for shimmer. You don't need a physician to tell you that's a bad idea. But then again, physicians in the Middle Ages weren't exactly beacons of good advice. One treatise recommended bathe in donkey milk and smear mashed fox lungs across your cheeks for a youthful glow. Another claimed that the breath of a fasting nun could cleanse your skin. Historians still argue whether those recipes were sincere or satirical. Honestly, it could go either way. You wash your face with tepid water and rosemary like always. No shimmer, no fox lungs, just enough to remove the day. The fire crackles as you poke it back to life. You hang your dress near the hearth to dry the damp hem. Then you slide into a woolen night shift and exhale for what feels like the first time all day. This is when the ache sets in. Not physical, the bruises on your feet will fade, but the ache of comparison, of knowing what's considered ideal and realizing you'll never quite reach it. Even if you wanted to, your nose is a little too broad, your hands too rough, your hips too narrow for birthing talk, and your skin, though clear, is more nut brown than porcelain. The sun has loved you too much for you to pass as noble. And yet, part of you still wants the performance. You remember a girl once, maybe 14, who tied leeches to her temples to make her face look more hollow. Her mother told her high cheekbones meant you were blessed by angels. Or was it demons? Hard to remember. Probably both. You remember another who swore by crushed snail shells and honey, claimed it softened her skin. You tried it, got stung by a bee. Lesson learned. Beauty in the Middle Ages was part superstition, part suffering, and part salesmanship. Take the traveling merchants, for example. The ones who came through town each month peddling vials of who knows what. Walrus oil for shine, vinegar for complexion, burnt almonds for eyeliner. You never bought anything, but you always watched. They told stories while they sold. Promised. Confidence, love, maybe even upward marriage. The promise of transformation is a powerful drug. But the worst, by far, are the folk remedies whispered woman to woman. For freckle removal, rub pigeon droppings on your cheeks at dawn. For hair lightening, soak it in stale wine and leave it in the sun. For tighter skin, smear raw egg white over your face and don't smile all day. And if you really wanted results, you'd find the apothecary with the blue door. The one who never spoke above a whisper, who sold secrets in tiny jars wrapped in wool. You never went, but you wanted to. And that's the part that sticks with you. Because even though you know most of it is nonsense, dangerous even, you still feel that familiar tug. What if it works? It's a question that has haunted women through centuries. What if I try this one thing, just once, and it changes everything? A sharper jawline, a smoother brow, a paler neck, and suddenly you're not just noticed, you're chosen. The idea is poison in pretty packaging. You pull the blanket up over your chest and lay flat, staring at the ceiling beams. The candle flickers. Outside, someone's dog barks twice and goes silent. You hear footsteps on gravel, then nothing. The stillness presses in, and you wonder, not for the first time, what it would feel like to stop caring entirely. To chop your hair, walk barefoot, smile with a missing tooth and not apologize for it, but then you remember tomorrow and the next festival, the next church feast, the next time someone might see you. You'll care again. Of course you will, because in this world, prettiness is armor, it's currency. It's an invisible contract that you didn't sign, but are still expected to honor. And while the price is steep, pain, patience, a piece of yourself you might never get back, it's a price many are still willing to pay. Because sometimes the performance is the only way to feel real. Morning comes on silent feet, slipping pale light through the cracks in your shutters. You wake with a start, dreams of dancing and melting mirrors already dissolving in your mind. The coals in the hearth are stone cold now, the chill of the floor biting your feet as soon as you swing them down. Your hands go instinctively to your face. There's a moment of quiet panic. Did you fall asleep without washing off yesterday's rouge? You run your fingers along your cheekbones, relieved to find only your own skin, faintly tacky from last night's rosemary rinse. You pull on your work clothes, a coarse shift and a patched overdress. Today isn't a festival. It's just another day of errands, chores, endless repetition. But beauty never takes a holiday. If anything, it's more demanding on the days no one's watching, because you know someone always could be. You gather your hair into a simple braid, binding it with the same green ribbon. The one that felt like hope yesterday now feels like routine. You wonder if Lady Marjorie, the one with hair like sunlight, wakes up feeling the same weight, or if beauty is lighter when everyone says you have it already. Outside, the village hums awake. The baker's oven crackles to life. Roosters cry, boots scuff along the lane. At the well, a group of women are already drawing water, voices rising, in hushed conversation. You approach with your bucket, careful not to meet anyone's gaze too directly. Eyes linger when you do. You never know if they're comparing or just curious. As you wait your turn, you overhear scraps of gossip. Someone's daughter has caught the eye of a knight's squire. Someone else's cousin is hiding a pregnancy. But what catches your ear is the talk of a new remedy making its way through town. A face wash made from boiled lily petals and crushed pearls, said to erase freckles and smooth wrinkles. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the scent of damp earth and distant bread fill your nose. Another miracle cure, another promise. Another lie, most likely. Historians still argue whether medieval beauty standards were more about health or about control. After all, if everyone strives for an impossible ideal, who profits? The sellers of creams, the keepers of secrets, the powerful who set the standard in the first place. Your turn at the well comes. You lower your bucket, the rope squeaking against the worn wood. The water is icy and clean, at least as clean as anything gets here. You haul it up, arms straining, careful not to spill. Water is precious. It's also a mirror. You glimpse your reflection in its surface. Your face, framed by dark hair, eyes a little tired, mouth set in quiet determination. You remember the stories of medieval queens who went to absurd lengths to maintain their looks. One supposedly slept with raw veal, pressed to her cheeks to keep them plump. Another imported a powder made from pulverized pearls, applying it nightly until she bankrupted an entire estate. You can't afford veal, let alone pearls, but you do have the same impulse to smooth, to brighten, to transform. And sometimes you hate yourself for it. You carry the bucket home carefully. Each step reminds you of the sore spots on your feet, left over from yesterday's dancing. You wonder if the boy who asked you to dance thought you were pretty, or if he simply needed a partner and you were the nearest face. Back inside, you wash your hands and splash a little water on your cheeks. The cold bites, but it wakes you up. The pain is oddly reassuring. It's the same pain your mother felt, and your grandmother before her, both of them standing at this same basin, fighting the same battle. You towel off your face, patting rather than rubbing. Then, with a sigh, you reach for your powder. A fine dust, pale and chalky, not lead this time, just ground rice flour. It doesn't cover as well, but it's safer. Marginally. You dip your fingertips in and press it over your forehead, nose, cheeks, chin. The powder clings to the moisture, muting the redness. You look more composed now. More like the person you need to be to face the day. The truth is, you do it for yourself as much as for others. Because when your face looks calm, you feel calmer. When your cheeks look even, you feel more balanced inside. It's a fragile illusion, but sometimes it's enough to get you through the morning. Your neighbor knocks on your door, asking if you'll walk with her to market. She doesn't comment on your face, but her eyes linger for half a breath longer than they need to. You nod, pull your shawl tight around your shoulders, and step into the street beside her. As you walk, you notice the small signs of everyone. Elsa's efforts, a smudged line of coal here, a too pale patch of powder there, a lip stain that's feathered along cracked skin. It's like a silent confession everyone wears on their face. I'm trying too. You pass a young girl chasing her brother, hair loose and tangled, cheeks pink from running. She's too young to worry yet. You envy her freedom. Your neighbor talks about the price of onions, the smell of fish, the rumor of a tax collector arriving soon. But under it all, you both know you're comparing yourselves to every other woman you pass. Measuring, silently. Does she look older? Prettier? Happier? The comparison is as relentless as it is invisible. Because beauty isn't a choice here. It's an obligation. A quiet war you wage alone every morning. And no matter how small the victory, a well-tied braid, a hint of flush, you savor it. Because tomorrow, the fight begins again. The market square buzzes with its usual symphony of creaking carts, clucking hens, and the ever-insistent cry of merchants hawking tired vegetables as if they were treasure. You've been here 1,000 times, and yet today, you feel eyes on you. Or maybe you only imagine them. Beauty paranoia has a way of blurring the lines. As you shuffle past the stalls, avoiding puddles and stray dogs, a woman at the herb cart catches your eye. She's older, perhaps in her late 40s, though it's hard to tell. Her skin is marked by years of sun and smoke, but there's a peace to her posture. She doesn't seem to care about the smudge of ash on her chin or the single hair sprouting defiantly from her chin. And the odd thing? She radiates something close to confidence. You buy a small bundle of rosemary from her. As she passes it to you, she says softly, "Don't boil it too long. You'll strip the good from it." You nod, unsure if she means the oil or the hope. Historians still argue whether women in the Middle Ages genuinely had beauty autonomy or were simply bending beneath the weight of cultural pressure. In reality, it was likely both. A tangled braid of social survival, personal pride, and forced conformity. You and your neighbor continue down the row of stalls. She stops to inspect a bolt of dyed wool. "This blue would make your eyes stand out," she says. You smile, unsure whether it's a compliment or a subtle suggestion that you look drab today. Either way, you respond with a non-committal hum, the universal language of avoiding fashion-related arguments. A nearby vendor is selling small jars of salve, homemade, judging by the uneven glass. A sign reads, "For spots, sores, and sins of the skin." You raise an eyebrow. The vendor notices and smiles toothlessly. "Rose oil, beeswax, a whisper of mint," he boasts. "Rub it on at night, wake up 2 years younger." You don't believe him. Of course you don't. But your hand still hovers near your coin purse. Because the truth is, in this world, beauty is often your only defense. If you're not married, beauty might attract a husband. If you are married, it might keep him from wandering. If you're neither, it may help soften the bite of suspicion in the eyes of townsfolk who don't understand unmarried women living alone. You're always one wrinkle away from irrelevance. You don't buy the jar, but you do walk away thinking about it more than you'd like to admit. Back home, you set the rosemary in water to soak and begin the next round of chores, sweeping, sorting, mending. All the while, the sun beats through the window, turning your kitchen into a dusty, warm cocoon. You hang laundry outside, mindful of how the breeze might dry the fabric unevenly. Appearances matter. Even your linens shouldn't look tired. As you pin the last piece, you overhear a passing conversation. 2 younger girls are whispering about a noblewoman in the next town over, Lady Cecily, who allegedly keeps her skin white by sleeping with her head over a bowl of steaming camphor each night. "She smells like pine tar," one giggles, "but she looks like a porcelain saint." You sigh, another impossible standard. Medieval beauty wasn't just about complexion. It extended to posture, gait, even voice. Women were encouraged to speak softly, walk slowly, and avoid laughter that showed too many teeth. Too much joy could be interpreted as vulgar, so could too much color in the cheeks. You remember a passage from a book a traveling friar once left behind. It claimed that true beauty came from inner purity, that God's light shone through a virtuous woman, making her radiant. You tried that theory for a week, being good, selfless, pious. No one noticed, especially not the local blacksmith who still favored the butcher's daughter with the impossible lashes and laced bodices. As you fold the now dry laundry, you catch your reflection in the window. You look like yourself, but not the self you sometimes imagine. The version with smoother skin, a heart-shaped face, daintier hands. No, this is the you that scrubs floors and walks through mud and keeps going anyway. You pause, fingers brushing, over a wrinkle near your eye you didn't have that last winter. Or maybe you did and only now noticed. In a quiet act of rebellion, you don't reach for the cream, you let the wrinkle stay. After dinner, simple broth and a heel of bread, you sit near the fire combing out your braid. Your scalp aches slightly, the result of too tight styling. A small sacrifice, really. Still, you can't help but wonder, is this the rest of your life? One long procession of effort without applause. You remind yourself of the queens who soaked, their faces in wine, the milk baths of the wealthy, the fish scale highlighters once used by a mad duchess. Beauty has always been performance, but only some women get an audience. Outside, a cold wind picks up. You close the shutters, stoke the fire, and settle into your chair. You pick up your embroidery, the thread catching in places it shouldn't. You're tired, but not just tired from the day. You're tired of striving, and yet, you'll wake tomorrow and do it all again. Because maybe, just maybe, beauty isn't about being seen. Maybe it's about claiming one small piece of grace in a world that rarely gives you any. The rosemary water is ready now. You soak a cloth and press it to your cheeks. The scent is sharp, herbaceous, grounding. You close your eyes and breathe. The morning light filters in through your wooden shutters, fractured and golden, as if even the sun itself must weave gently through the modest gaps of your world. You rise slower today. Your back hums from yesterday's laundry bending. Your knees argue a bit louder than usual. You pad across the cool floor, feet silent, as though not to wake the invisible weight you carry. In the looking glass, faintly warped from age and sun, your reflection greets you. The rosemary compress did little, if anything. Maybe the bags under your eyes are slightly less rebellious. Maybe it's just wishful thinking. But you dab your face with cold water anyway, because routines, not miracles, keep women going. Today is market day in the next village, which means nobility might pass through. And when nobles pass through, the rules tighten. So you dress carefully, not extravagantly. You're not trying to tempt fate, but deliberately. A cleaner smock, tighter bodice, and a modest dab of that rose petal tincture on the wrists. Just enough to say, I care, but not enough to say, I'm trying. On the walk there, you pass a group of children pretending to be lords and ladies. One of the girls holds a stick like a scepter and commands the others to bow or be banished. Another wears a crown of nettles and pretends to powder her face with a puff of dandelion fluff. You remember being their age. The thrill of pretending you were beautiful, simply because you said so. Before you learned, beauty had a cost and a currency. The village square is already buzzing. The stalls here are neater, more varied. Imported fabrics, spiced fruit, colored powders. Nobility means money, and money attracts all sorts. One particular booth draws a crowd, its table covered in small, shining mirrors. A rare commodity. Most households make do with polished metal, often so warped it's less reflection and more interpretive art. The merchant speaks with flair. Venetian glass, imported, the very same used by the Queen of Aragon's personal maid. He holds up a tiny mirror framed in silver. See yourself as royalty sees themselves. You lean in. What would it be? Like you wonder to see yourself clearly? Not through warped glass or whispered judgments, not through the ever-changing filter of society's demands, but just as you are. The price tag ensures you won't find out today. A few stalls down, you overhear two young women discussing a new beauty cure from across the sea, something called mercury powder. It makes your skin pale, one says. Blisteringly pale, the other adds with a grin. They laugh, but not for long. One of them lifts her sleeve to reveal a rash blooming up her arm like angry ivy. Still, she says, worth it. You shudder. Mercury. The same substance used in alchemy. The same used to kill rats. And yet, beauty demands sacrifice. And sacrifice is easier to stomach when society rewards the pain. Historians still debate whether women in the medieval world understood the long-term dangers of these beauty substances, or if desperation blurred their judgment. What's clear is that the consequences rarely discouraged use. When your future depends on being chosen by a suitor, by society, by fortune itself, the gamble feels justified. You stop at a booth with hand-sewn lace. The vendor's hands are calloused, and her eyes are sharp. "Lace for love," she says, gesturing to the delicate weave. No man resists a hint of collarbone framed in lilies. You glance down at your own neckline. It's plain, practical. But something in you aches to be admired, even if just once. You buy a small scrap, not enough for a full collar, but maybe a modest trim, something just for you. Later, as the sun begins its slow arc down the sky, you catch sight of a noblewoman stepping from her carriage. Her gown is blue velvet, her hair braided with silver ribbons, her face dusted with a chalk-white powder that makes her look like a ghost in daylight. Around her neck hangs a jeweled pendant, no doubt worth more than your entire home. She glides rather than walks, flanked by two men who seem to orbit her like moons. And though she is admired by all eyes around, there's a stiffness in her smile, as if even happiness must be curated to be elegant. You don't envy her, not entirely, but you do wonder, how many layers does she wear? How many corsets beneath? That gown? How many rules is she breaking just by stepping outside? Because that's the secret no one admits. Even the highest ladies live in cages. They're just lined with silk. As you return home, the path feels longer. The lace in your pocket is warm from your hand. The mirror still lingers in your thoughts. What if you could see yourself, really see, without the judgment, without the rules? You think of the older woman at the herb stall, her smudged face, her peace, and suddenly it doesn't seem foolish. Maybe aging isn't losing beauty. Maybe it's letting go of its burden. That night, you sew the lace into your plainest smock, not for attention, not for praise, just so you remember. Softness belongs to you too. As you drift to sleep, the moonlight dances on your window pane. No glass mirror, no rose cream, no audience, just you, as you are, and it is enough. The rain starts soft, barely a whisper, tapping at your shutters like a friend asking to come in without disrupting your peace. It's one of those misty gray mornings where everything feels wrapped in wool, the kind of day that urges you to linger in bed just a little longer, letting the chill stay on the other side of the blanket. But the firewood won't fetch itself, and the hens outside still expect their feed with the same relentless optimism, rain or shine. You slip into your now-laced smock, your secret triumph from the market, and step outside. The air smells like wet earth and moss, and your shoes soak through before you've taken 5 steps. You don't mind. In fact, there's something grounding about it, isn't there? Mud between your toes feels more honest than powdered faces and fake smiles. You visit your neighbor on the way to the woods. She's older, maybe 70, but still walks with a straight back and sharper wit than most half her age. She answers the door holding a tin of crushed eggshells, which she swears are good for her rose bushes. Better than that lead paste they put on their faces, she jokes, squinting up at the sky. At least this won't kill me slowly. The two of you sit for a while under her awning, watching the drizzle and sharing old bread with soft cheese. She tells you about her younger days, when she used to use charcoal to darken her eyebrows, not for beauty, but to make herself look meaner during tax season. Ugly women got less grief from the collectors, she chuckles. Beauty, she adds, has never been free, not in coin and not in peace. That sticks with you, because even though you know the dangers of medieval cosmetics, white lead, belladonna, mercury, and even sulfur, you can't help but marvel at how they were still used, generation after generation. Historians still argue whether women were victims of a toxic system or active agents who weaponized beauty in a world where their power was so limited. And maybe it's both. Maybe beauty was both trap and tool. A leash around your neck, yes. But sometimes, if you pulled just right, it turned into reins instead. On your way back, you run into a man from the manor, one of the stable hands. Not noble, but employed by nobles, which means proximity and that strange glow it casts on even the most average men. He greets you with a polite nod and eyes that linger 1 second too long on the lace now stitched at your collar. New trim? He asks. Looks fine. Not lovely. Not radiant. Just fine. And that's what gets you somehow. Because it reminds you how tightly women's worth is bound to the judgments of others. How a 3-syllable opinion can tilt your day. You thank him and walk on, pretending not to care. But you roll the word over in your mind as you go. Fine. At home, you set your kindling to dry near the hearth and pull out a scrap of linen you've been mending. It's a head wrap, plain and fraying, but it does the job. As you sew, you think about all the ways women used fabric as armor. Veils, wimples, hoods, all with their social meanings, all with their secret codes. In the Middle Ages, a bare head could signify poverty, promiscuity, or even protest. Married women often kept their hair covered, not just for modesty, but for safety. Hair was considered both dangerous and divine, capable of seduction and spiritual destruction. Some religious orders insisted that visible hair was akin to visible sin. In some parts of Europe, even nuns wore spiked headpieces designed to discourage vanity, to make sure they didn't admire themselves. You wrap the linen loosely around your own head and glance at your reflection in the fireplace glass. A little older, a little wiser, a little softer. The flames ripple across your face like a memory you don't quite recognize. And for a moment, you're struck by how beauty has always been something shaped and reshaped by the beholder. You remember hearing a tale once of a woman who used to carry a tiny carved mirror in her apron. Not for vanity, but to remind herself she existed. The world forgets women, she used to say. Even we forget ourselves. But if I can see me, I know I'm still here. You understand that now. Later that afternoon, a peddler comes through the village. His cart is stacked with things people don't really need but desperately want. Colored ribbons, foreign soaps, tiny perfumes in cloudy bottles. He offers a jar of goose grease and rose oil, guaranteed to smooth the skin and turn back the tide of age. You decline, politely, because today the lace on your smock is enough. The lines on your face are honest. The world may not find you lovely, but you've started to like how you look when no one's watching. The rain fades by evening. You open the shutters and let the damp breeze in. You let your hair down. You don't light a candle, because tonight the shadows don't feel like a threat. They feel like rest. The next morning arrives not with fanfare, but with the slow hush of a world just beginning to wake. Outside your window, mist coils around the thatched roofs like silk unraveling from an old spool, and the birds, not yet fully committed to the day, offer only the softest chirps. You stretch beneath the wool blanket, one leg poking out just enough to test the air, which has finally shaken off the rain's chill. For once, there's no urgent chore to pull you from bed. Just a quiet sense that time is unfolding and you're allowed to unfold with it. In the Middle Ages, luxury wasn't about gold or jewels. It was time. Free time. Time to breathe, to think, to not be useful. And for a woman, that was the rarest indulgence of all. You savor this moment. Not because you've earned it, though you have, but because it feels like a tiny act of rebellion. To do nothing is to refuse for a moment to perform. You drift to your little mirror again, the one propped on the windowsill. You lean in, tracing the outline of your cheek with one finger. It's not about vanity. It's about familiarity. Your face is the only one that's followed you from childhood through illness, hunger, heartbreak, and laughter. It deserves a second look. You think about the face-painting rituals that persisted throughout the Middle Ages, how noble women tinted their cheeks with saffron and cochineal, how peasant girls pinched theirs just before entering a room. The desire to bloom a little brighter, even in mud and manure, never really goes away. Historians still argue whether these beauty habits were learned submission or quiet assertion, but maybe it was simply human. This instinct to glow. Later that morning, the village gathers for market day. A symphony of wooden wheels, gossiping lips, and the clatter of baskets on cobblestones. You slip into the crowd like a thread through cloth, invisible and present all at once. You pass a girl no older than 14, her face painted stark white with flour paste, her eyebrows shaved off and redrawn unnaturally high. She's trying to look older, richer, more seen. You feel a pang, one part empathy, one part memory. Because you remember being her, when beauty felt like a door to safety or to status, or to a softer kind of attention. But you also remember the exhaustion that followed. The endless recalibration. Too much rouge and you're indecent, too little and you're invisible. The line shifts daily, and it's almost always drawn by someone else's hand. A traveling friar is preaching at the edge of the square. He's railing against vanity, against painted faces and sinful garments. He calls beauty a gateway to damnation, a trap set by the devil himself. A few villagers nod, their expressions caught between fear and relief. You wonder how many of them will still apply rose water behind their ears tonight, just in case. You buy a small tin of elder salve from an apothecary, woman with tobacco-stained fingers and a jaw like cracked stone. She doesn't promise miracles, just moisture. And honesty like that feels more rare than beauty these days. As you walk home, past the churchyard where statues crumble and vines bloom unchecked, you begin to notice something else. How beauty, in the Middle Ages, wasn't just personal, it was political. It was used to forge alliances, seal marriages, display allegiance to God or king. A noblewoman's carefully curled hair wasn't just fashionable, it was a public declaration of her family's status. A clean face was a sign of inner purity, a veiled one, of obedience. And yet, tucked beneath all of that theater, there were always women like you, quietly reclaiming the mirror, not for performance, not for approval, but to remember. At home, you sit by the fire and begin to unravel. A hem you no longer care to hide. The dress is old but still yours. You patch it with mismatched thread and a small flourish of embroidery no one will likely notice. But it's yours. And it's enough. The cat curls at your feet, purring so. Low it vibrates through the floorboards. You think about how often women were likened to cats. Coy, mysterious, manipulative. You snort softly. If anything, cats are just good at ignoring nonsense. You could learn from that. Evening slips in quietly, blanketing the village in lavender. Dusk. The moon rises with a lazy grace, swollen and silver like an old mirror hung high above the trees. You light a single candle, not for visibility, but for ritual. The flicker steadies you. You pull out a bit of charcoal and sketch a small flower on a scrap of parchment. It's not good, but it's yours. No judge, no rules, just creation. And in this moment, you realize something profound. Beauty might not belong to the beholder at all. Maybe it never did. Maybe it's something you carry, something you shape, something you reclaim every time you smile into a cracked mirror, or rub elder salve into your hands, or laugh with spinach in your teeth without caring who sees. Maybe real beauty is knowing that you are not on display. You are alive. You close your eyes. The candle burns lower, and in the silence between heartbeats, you feel it. The freedom of not being looked at, just being. Your head sinks into the linen pillow you fluffed earlier, still faintly scented with dried lavender from last summer's bundle. The fire's glow has mellowed into an ember's hush, casting faint golden shapes that crawl slowly across the timbered. Ceiling beams like sleepy dancers too tired to finish their last waltz. You lie there still, your breath sinking with the rhythm of a world that, for once, asks nothing of you. Your feet are warm beneath the quilt. Your hands are dry, no longer red from scrubbing, and even your thoughts begin to drift like autumn leaves on a lazy stream. And it's here, in this delicate quiet, that the unspoken cost of medieval prettiness begins to truly land. See, it wasn't just the powders, pastes, and poisons that women used, it was the expectation to use them, to become art without ever being the artist, the idea that your face belonged more to society than to yourself, that your value could be ranked and traded like sheep, weighed by bone structure and brow shape, then used to negotiate your fate. Historians still argue whether women internalized these ideals or resisted them in small daily acts. But truthfully, you suspect it was both. Resistance can wear pearls. Compliance can scowl behind a veil. You remember the noble women who plucked their hairlines to mimic high foreheads, who powdered their skin so pale it turned translucent, who wore headdresses so wide they couldn't walk through doorways straight. It wasn't vanity. It was survival disguised as style. Beauty became a shield, and like any shield, it was heavy. And yet, despite it all, the pressure never fully silenced the human urge to feel lovely, not for others, but for oneself. It's why girls carved combs from bone and tucked flowers into their aprons. It's why women hid tiny glass mirrors beneath their prayer books. It's why you, right now, trace the faint shape of a dimple with your pinky and smile into the dark. There's a strange sort of magic in realizing you're allowed to enjoy beauty without explaining it, to wear your favorite color on a Monday, to sing while chopping onions, to walk with a bit more sway, just because the breeze feels nice on your ankles. You think back to that friar's sermon, how he called beauty a gateway to sin. But maybe he was just afraid of women who loved themselves out loud. After all, beauty, true beauty, is power. Not the kind that conquers, but the kind that withstands. The kind that persists, even in mud-caked shoes and cracked fingernails. As the candle finally gutters out beside you, you're left with only the moon and the hush of your own breathing. The silence doesn't feel empty. It feels earned. And now, just before sleep takes you completely, you reach for one final thought, one you wish every woman in your village could hear, one you'd whisper into the wind if it would carry. You were never meant to be ornamental. You were meant to be whole. The beauty they demanded was always fleeting. The beauty you carry, that strange, private, quietly joyful sort, is not. It is yours. Always was. Always will be. Word count, 1018. Wind down, 300 words. And now, everything softens. The wind outside has quieted, as if it too has grown drowsy. The village is asleep, and so is the judgment, the noise, the gaze of others. There are no mirrors here, no powders or pins, just the gentle shape of your breath. rising and falling in the dark. You feel the weight of the day lift from your chest like a wool cloak slipped off and folded neatly at the foot of the bed. There's nothing left to carry. No need to be seen, no role to play. Just your body, your mind, and this slow, unraveling peace. Let yourself drift now. Let your thoughts melt into the rhythm of night, the quiet creak of wood settling, the distant rustle of leaves, the steady echo of your own quiet presence. You are not waiting to be chosen. You are not performing. You are simply resting. Let the weight behind your eyes grow heavier, as if each blink is pulling you further into a safe, still place. A place where no one measures your worth in cheekbones or complexion, where beauty is not borrowed but born, gently, quietly, effortlessly. Let go of the pins, the powders, the poses. Let go of every voice that ever said you weren't enough. Because right here, right now, you are whole, and the night loves you for it. Sleep deeply, traveler. You've earned it.